Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars and Auto House of Naples on a miserably muggy Florida Tuesday. Again, I know I complain about the weather a lot. I know it's not necessarily what everybody wants, but you know, it's very cathartic to me. It just absolutely helps me cope. And today is towards the beginning of August, which is by far the shittiest month here in Naples, Florida. I mean, without any question. July is bad enough. August is a little bit worse. And you know, again, I'm taking videos here blind. I can't really see through my glasses, which are all fogged up. The humidity is just blanketing the air in this moist, revolting feeling, and it just makes everything rotten, just absolutely rotten. And what could you do? I mean, I'm barely out of the house, and I just feel like I've jumped in a swimming pool already. You just get sweat everywhere, and that's why all the smartest people leave this damn town right around this time of year. Certainly nobody spends August here, so we have basically a deserted town, which I can't blame anyone for at all. And one day when I figure shit out properly, I'm not going to be here either, I swear to God. The only thing that I will say is that August leads to September, and even though September is also really shitty, it's the beginning of the Burr months, where you start to think, okay, you know, October is coming, November is good weather is coming, so you have some hope. But at the beginning of August, there's just no hope at all, so the hell with that. Anyway, I'll keep it there. Animal activity at an absolute low. I hear some birds around. None of them sound very threatening, just some little background chirping. That could all that one sounds a little bit weird. But anyway, I haven't seen much in the way of bird activity. Goats, completely gone. Haven't seen them. Don't think I will. And I have to say that even though this property out here is sort of in the sticks, and I thought I would be inundated with strange animals coming at me, for the most part, it hasn't been that way. On the drive up the road, sometimes you see a bunch of deer. They act suicidal. Same with the rabbits. They all want to run in front of you. But for the most part, everyone keeps to themselves. And unless something changes, I have to say this has been a pretty good place for being devoid of animals. Well, of course, minus the whole goat incident, which was a nightmare and went on for some time. So anyway, haven't made a video in a while. Apologize for that. I've been running around trying to acquire some cars. This is one of the ones I acquired. In fact, I acquired a shitload of cars, a mile of cars, and that's a good thing. So I'm all tapped out, and now I can get down to business and start marketing the damn things, including this one. Even to the point, by the way, that I think I'm skipping the Spec Miata race at Daytona this weekend, which, in order to do that, you really have to, you know, I mean, I love those races. I live for them. But frankly, all of my pathetic friends already bailed out because they're pathetic. And, you know, I just can't see going up there, spending 5 hours. The race often gets rained out up there, so the hell with it. I'm just going to zero in on the cars I have to do. We'll get them photographed, marketed, videoed, and have some fun with it. The Cordoba, never-ending friggin' issues. I swear to God. I know it sounds like the hollowest of dreams at this point, but we do have that 81 Cordoba coming up, and I haven't decided whether to do the 81 Imperial at the same time. I'm going to have the corner on the 81 Chrysler market for sure, and that's great fun. There's even a Beetle in there, so we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. But that said, we're going to leap right into this thing, immediately just dive into it, and this is a 1977 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Brougham Coupe. I love this car, I have to say, and not just this type of car, which I, you know, frankly do love, but this individual car has been an absolute joy to drive. The only thing that I could compare it to is that black 86 Jag I had recently, where it was just an absolute treat and a surprise how nice and how well it drove. This car has proved to be the same. Now, I know it helps that it's a, you know, 19,000 mile one owner example, which frankly is, you know, not that hard. But I have been in a lot of low mileage cars that drive like shit or haven't been maintained or haven't been kept up to snuff. There's an Antique Automobile Association sticker on the windshield of this thing, which leads me to believe that the guy who had it was probably a pretty crafty cat and kept it in pretty good running condition. And having bought it now, I am enjoying the hell out of it. I mean, it is unbelievably smooth to drive around. And even though these cars were once extremely prolific, you really don't see them anymore. So I'm getting a lot of thumbs up and, you know, waves and that sort of thing from people who either know the cars or just think it's really cool to look at. And that's all great stuff. But anyway, this is, again, a 77 Cutlass Supreme Brougham. The Cutlass was far and away the most popular of what's called the Colonnade cars, which was a style of cars built by GM from 70... Oh, God, there's all the text coming in, so let's get rid of that. It drives me nuts. But anyway, the Colonnade cars, which were made from 73 through 77, and every GM division, with the exception of Cadillac, had one. They were extremely prolific, and they actually were a collaboration of all the GM divisions, and they're considered somewhat controversial, or at least they were in their day, but I think that's more a function of when they came out than the car itself. I mean, you have to understand, these things came out, they were supposed to come out in 72. Because of a strike, they came out in 1973, and that was right around the time that everything was changing. But before we get into all that, let's have a quick look at 1977. So we can set the stage for this car. So what do you have? In 1977, I was young, by the way. I was 6 and probably having a great time. But Jimmy Carter took the reins of the presidency, had been elected in 76 and came to power in 77, and basically ushered in peak Malaise. I mean, this is it, man. I mean, this is, you know, the Malaise era certainly got its start in the early 70s, but by the time Carter came around, it was absolutely hitting the red line on the needle. So Carter brought that in. If you remember, in fact, one of the first things he did, other than have a Billy beer at the White House, was give away the Panama Canal. So you really had to like him for that. But anyway, he's a very fine man, I'm sure, and a gentleman. But president-wise, I don't know. That rabbit that attacked him probably had the right idea. But anyway, there it was. You had Carter in there. In the cinema, you had Star Wars. You had Saturday Night Fever with Travolta. You had Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which, you know, as a kid, that was a pretty cool movie to me. Haven't seen it since then. Probably should queue it up just to see if it's held its own, if it stands the test of time. Somehow I doubt it. The Commodore 64, not the 64, sorry, the Commodore PET came out, and the Apple II. These were kind of the first consumer-level personal computers, and, you know, God knows what that would go on to change. Of course, now we have Facebook and all these other horrific things that have destroyed everyday life in America, but yeah, we'll get into that another time. Elvis Presley, he had a very inelegant death in 1977. Without getting into the specifics, he was probably not the most attractive corpse to find after it happened, and you know, it turned out his doctor kind of filled him full of pills, and he just basically blew out his heart at age 42, the poor guy. But that was a pretty big deal. He passed away. Still, it was a pretty good year for serial killers. You had the son of Sam, Berkowitz. He was captured and you know, sent away, and then picking up the slack was Kenneth Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler. He got to work out west right around the same time that the son of Sam was captured, so he kept the ball rolling. Snow fell in Miami in 77 for, I think, the first and last time. I don't think that's been recorded before or after, and I kind of remember that day, if I remember correctly. In Naples, we're about the same level as Miami, just over on the other side of the coast, and I was here at age 6, and I have this vision of waiting at the bus stop, freezing my ass off, and thinking my parents were absolute bastards, and that is a very distinct memory for me. I don't think we've had a colder day since. Also in 77, an American guy, Ron Sullivan, struck by lightning for the 7th time. You would honestly think at that stage, by the time like the fourth time rolled around, he would understand that he was cursed and would probably try to find another way out. But no, he keeps going, he perseveres, and in 77 he's struck for the seventh time. That's all I read up on, by the way. I don't know if there was an eighth or ninth time. Maybe the seventh time got him. But either way, that poor son of a bitch. He reminds me of those guys who get the hiccups for like 30 years. You read about those cats, you know, in the... I don't remember where I saw it once, but some poor guy, he had the hiccups for like decades. And I mean, honestly, after the first month, I would take my own life. I really don't think I would have another choice. I mean, I get suicidal if I have the hiccups for 20 minutes. 30 years? Yeah, forget it. Also in 77, the Atari 2600 came out. That was the video game system of my youth. It was kind of shit in 77, but back in 80, then all of a sudden Space Invaders came out, and then a year or two later Pitfall, and then it really started exploding. And of course that has led to all the insane video game crap that we see today, which just absolutely depresses me. I mean, my nephews can, you know, achieve 43rd level on any number of video games, but they can't change a friggin' spare tire. You know, that's just the nature of the world today. The Lady Marines were disbanded in 77. You know, Carter, again, they just became regular Marines, I'm sure to the delight of regular Marines. And, you know, honestly, everybody, they sort of missed the Lady Marine review show that was probably going on. And then finally, if we're going to get into 77, you got to talk about the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, which happened in Kentucky and was actually just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. And that was this big rickety building, a famous nightclub that dated back to the 1920s with prohibition and gambling. In fact, Dean Martin, as a kid, as a young man, he came from Ohio. He worked there as a blackjack dealer. And it was a bit posh, the place, but it was absolutely shit, overbuilt, beyond capacity, had shitty wiring everywhere, and just went up in smoke in a hurry and killed 165 people, not including John Davidson, by the way, who was performing there in a cabaret show at the time, and he escaped, thank God, because he went on to host Hollywood Squares later. But anyway, that is 1977, and that is the stage for which this car was released. And let's just get back into it. So the Colonnade, as it's called, it's an architectural term, meaning a row of pillars. And GM decided to adopt the name and use it in marketing. So these all became Colonnade cars. And again, everyone except Cadillac had one. And there was a whole variety of different Colonnade cars. But, you know, Pontiacs, Buick, Chevys, Oldsmobiles, whatnot. There was all these things. Now, one of the ways it's identifiable is by this... basically what it replaced was the hardtop convertible, or the hardtop, you know, the ones where all the side windows went down. So you just had this hardtop. The whole side was open. GM had a feeling that there was going to be some federal rollover regulations on the way. I don't think they were there yet, but they were on the way. So they decided to just get the head start on it. So they took the A-body and made it into this pillared coupe, where you had the sort of distinct opera window and very distinct back glass, mind you, frameless glass, all very cool, but it would have much more strength and integrity in terms of a rollover. But doing away with the very popular hardtop setup with the open side windows, again, caused a little bit of controversy and gave these cars some issues to contend with. On top of that, they were also, because of the strike, released in 73, which meant that they were amongst the first cars to have these sort of oversized and at the time unwelcome 5-mile-an-hour bumpers. So that's another thing that caused them some consternation and why some people didn't like them. You also have to understand the cars that they were replacing. I mean, the A-bodies before this one were much beloved, and in fact some of the greatest muscle cars in history were A-body cars. You've got Pontiac GTO, you've got the Buick GS, you've got the all those crazy big block Chevelles, and then all of a sudden, boom, gone is the focus on this performance, mostly because of safety and insurance stuff, not to mention fuel problems, and in is the focus on sort of personal luxury. So a lot of people just did not like that. This one is the final year, 77, of the Cutlasses. And the Cutlasses, they were by far the most popular. I mean, this car absolutely catapulted Oldsmobile into the top tier of U.S. car makers. In 76, the Cutlass lineup was the most popular car in America, sold the most cars. In 77, it was second, but barely. And that would go on for a few more years where they were competing for the top position. And, you know, people now, you don't necessarily realize it unless you live through it. And in fact, I didn't. I more or less read about it because I was just a kid when this came out. But in the 70s, Oldsmobile was an aspirational brand. It was, if you will, a mini Cadillac of sorts. I mean, if you were buying an Oldsmobile, then you were a forward-looking, forward-thinking dude or dudette on your way to bigger and better things. I mean, you could almost say it was a yuppie car of the 1970s. And as such, they flew off the shelves. In 77, there were 124,000 of these Cutlass Supreme Broughams made. Never mind the standard Cutlass Supreme Coupe, of which almost double were made. I mean, they sold a crap load of these things. Not in any small part because of Oldsmobile's great reputation for quality and, you know, engineering, good engines, that sort of thing. In fact, in 73, Car and Driver, which was a very respected magazine at the time, did a comparison test between a four-door Colonnade Cutlass and a Mercedes 450 SE S-Class, and they did it without irony. They would say that, you know, these were, obviously the Mercedes cost a lot more, but it was close enough that it was worth comparing them, and I think that's a pretty damn cool thing. All right, so in 73 to 77, there were a bunch of different trim levels you could get. There was the base Cutlass, there was the Cutlass S, on which the 442 trim package was based. There was the, and again, this is going over the years, the Cutlass Supreme, the Cutlass Salon, which was a kind of a European type setup with different suspension and features and kind of along the lines of the Grand Am from Pontiac, meant to compete with the Euro cars. And then finally the Cutlass Supreme Brougham, which was the essentially the top of the line car from them at this time and the most expensive. But again, sold a crap load of them. And there were coupes, there were sedans, there were wagons, there were even a pickup. Well, there was no pickup. There was no El Camino Oldsmobile, which is a shame. But the A-body Colonnade platform did host a Chevy El Camino. So there was a lot of different stuff you could get in the Colonnade lineup. And it's hard to believe that just 25 years or so after this, in 2004, there would be no more Oldsmobile. I mean, in the 70s, Oldsmobile was ruling the day. I mean, they were amongst the top 3 companies every year. They were everywhere. You couldn't throw a rock on the streets without hitting a Cutlass in the mid and late 1970s. And sure enough, you know, not much longer, they just blew it. They absolutely wrecked it. And that was the end. I mean, because there were other Colonnade cars, they just didn't sell as well. The Pontiac Le Mans didn't sell very well at all. Good-looking car, but didn't do very well. There was the Chevy Chevelle and Malibu, that sort of thing. And that obviously was a pretty good competitor for this car. And the Buick Century, the Century Regal. And then you had the Monte Carlo and the Grand Prix, but that was a stretched A-body, the A-body special platform. And I did a video on a 77, one of those recently, which I'll link to in the bottom here. But anyway, so they were extremely popular cars. And they had pretty big shoes to fill, but apparently Americans like them because they bought the absolute crap out of them. Anyway, so there it is. So the styling on this one, I think, is absolutely gorgeous. I like it better than the, God, I'm dripping. Give me a minute to wipe myself off here. I like it better than the 73 version. There's a lot of debate about that. A lot of people are going to like the earlier ones better. The reason I like these later ones better are the 4 square lamps up front with the waterfall grille and, of course, all the chrome and... I think it's just the most attractive front end that was put on a car, and obviously a lot of Americans agreed because they bought the crap out of them. They absolutely bought the crap out of them. You see the angled bumper in the front end sort of comes to a V. Love those split waterfall grills, love the 4 lamps. very, very attractive all overall. And being the Brougham, of course, it's laden with trim and chrome and that sort of thing. You see it as a vinyl quarter top, a landau top, very, very attractive, befitting a Brougham trim package, if you will. I do like the V'd back windshield, the angled back windshield. I think that's quite cool. Very, very attractive to look at. The earlier Cutlasses had weird sort of swoopy body lines coming off the front and rear fenders. I think they were good looking, but I don't mind them being gone. By 77 they were. Car maybe looked a little bit more traditional without them. This has the 15-inch Rally 3. Rally. Oh, God. Coronavirus whiskey does take its toll. The Super Sport 3 wheels. The Super Sport wheels like this one have a long history with Oldsmobile. They ran from the 60s all the way through 87 with the end of the G-body, and truly were a definitive Oldsmobile wheel in a variety of different forms. Original, 2s, 3s, whatever. But they're, you know, sort of definitive by their 5-spoke design, trim ring. By these, you know, 77 versions, they were body color, which I think looks really nice. And this car is riding on radial TAs, which I didn't realize they were such a nice riding tire. They're obviously pretty fresh on this one too, because god damn does it ride smooth. But I think absolutely the wheel tire combo just makes this car. Also has sort of bullet aerodynamic mirrors reminiscent of, it looked like the same mirrors that were on my 79 Firebird as a kid, and I think they look great. Getting into the back end of it, I like that little hitch up towards the rear, the swooping back end, the taillights that integrate into those quarter panels to the point where they sort of go up on top. And of course, by 77, they had moved the license plate and fuel filler door up above the bumper, which is much, much more convenient. So anyway, there is a very super quick overview. I'm dripping, I'm sweating, I have to dry myself off. So I'm going to take this opportunity to get my crap inside the car, pull it up out of the sun a little bit, and then we're going to go over this car and then go for a drive. So bear with me for one moment. Alright, so let's do this. This is a one-owner, 19,000-mile car with original paint. Came out of North Carolina, and it's an absolute time machine. I have to say I've rarely been so impressed with the overall condition of a vehicle, both cosmetic and mechanical. It's just an absolute sweetheart, and I feel very lucky to have it. One little bit of a bummer, and you know, I'm going to explain this in the video, so when you call up, little Richard doesn't have to suffer by doing it. The title on the car was exempted, as they call it. Not every state has this, so it's a mystery to some people. But what exempt means is you go into the DMV to, you know, move your address, change your title somehow, and they have to come up with the new paperwork, the new title. You may not know the exact odometer reading of the car, and if it's over 10 years old, they just exempt it. Instead of putting miles in, they just use exempt, it's called. And that's kind of a shortcut for lazy DMV people to do, which is always a shame because it's just better to keep an actual amount title. Oh, there I am zooming in. But otherwise, anybody who has any questions about the mileage on this car, the minute you hop in it, look at it, drive it, run it around, forget it. You'll have no more questions at all. That's something I promise. But anyway, that's what an exempt title is all about. And if you need further explanation, give little Richard a call. He loves talking about it. But anyway, let's just dive into this thing. It doesn't have a little flappy thing on the trunk, which I don't know if that's a shame or a good thing. It's certainly a good thing for me being one-handed, but yeah, anyway, there it is. So a nice sized trunk. There was no issue with space inside these Colonnade cars. They had, you know, again, they were sort of downsized for their day, but by modern standards, they were still pretty damn enormous. And in fact, this 77 came out at the same time as that. You remember we did the Delta 88 just a few days ago. That car also came out in 77, that four-door sedan, which the Deltas are supposed to be much bigger than the Supremes, but for that 1 year only, they were essentially the same size. So this is still a pretty damn big car. Sorry about my crap in there. Here's the original GM rubber floor mats, which is astounding. Really, really neat to see that. There you see the original spare tire, never been on the ground. Everything looking very clean and and proper here inside the trunk. Nowhere really to strap down an infant or a toddler, so if you put them in there, they're kind of on their own. They're going to be running around, bouncing. I would suggest if you do put them in there and you care enough, then, you know, kind of take it easy. Don't do a lot of high-speed maneuvering and such, because they're just going to bounce all over the place. And being the 70s, they didn't put soft edges on things, so they'll probably get knocked up a little bit, or banged up anyway. But otherwise, everything nice inside the trunk. You can see the original jacking stickers still there, and of course the gleaming paint underneath. I believe it also has a light, which is why you see wires running into it, because of course these Brougham models, as indicated here, were pretty damn well equipped. Have a look under the hood. So you can get a variety of engines in these cars over the years. Oh God, that's a heavy one. Anyway, changed up a little bit, but in 77 you had a few choices. You had the 231 V6 for gas saving, and I believe that was the standard motor. In fact, the 231 was standard in the 442. I don't know if anyone's ever seen a 231 powered 442 trim package, but theoretically you could get one from Oldsmobile. Then you could get a 260 Rocket V8, a 4.3 liter, also a gas saver, and then this one, the 350 Rocket, which to me is frankly the best of the bunch. I mean, it's the 350 Oldsmobile is an incredible engine. I mean, it is, and it had a great reputation at the time. It has a great reputation today. It is just one of the most bulletproof and lovely V8s that was made, and you know, that is something I'll fight someone on to the death. It's just a terrific engine in this car. You could also get an optional 403 in 77 that replaced the 455 option that you could get in some of the earlier cars, which of course pretty cool, but by the time Carter's coming into office, gone are the big cubic inch compression engines, and in are the Malaise era stuff. So the 403 was pretty good. I had one in my old Firebird that I drove to high school, the Formula, but I don't think it had the same overall quality of the 350 with, you know, thicker cylinder walls and whatnot. This was just a fantastic engine. That's coupled to a turbo hydromatic 350 trans, terrific transmission in the car, going into a 10-bolt GM rear end. So all very, you know, traditional stuff and shared amongst all the Colonnade cars. It had the front suspension was modeled after the second gen Camaro Firebird. It's very smooth, it's radial tuned, and it does steer and drive very, very nice. You've got some trailing arms and coil springs at the back, and that also is a pretty nice setup. I also like the hidden wipers in this car, the way they, you know, park themselves down under the end of the hood. Looks nice, and very happy to see an air conditioning setup in this car. But everything incredibly original and nice under the hood. You can see even a little hole in this, whatever the hell it is, this paper mache shit that they run off the air cleaner. But the fact that it's still there and in this condition is a testament to the incredible preservation on this car. It's just epic, and everything is nice and lovely under there. You also got power assisted front discs, good brakes in the car, and rear drums, but you know, the whole car stopped very well. And I have to say, driving it, the way it just feels so agile and nimble, which I guess we'll get into on our drive, and it's just lovely. But I think, of course, that has something to do with the preservation of this car. Anyway, everything nice and proper under the hood. Let's see if we can get that back down. Lovely. Have a look inside. I'll have to pull it forward here in a minute for the sun. Okay, now because this car is a Brougham, it is, you know, top level package. It is all bromed up. I mean, it is a mixture of real fancy cloth and materials with velour and pillow seating, and just everything absolutely as bromy as you can get it. If we go into the back seats here, you can see they're not leaving your Canadian friends out. They're going to have some pillow back there. You've also got some nice velour-y cloth on the door panels, and you know, you seat 3 back there, no issues, no problem. problems, everything lovely. Also, you can fit 3 people up front, so it's essentially a 6-passenger coupe, which just is something which really doesn't exist anymore in the world of SUVs. Door panels, you know, again, a little bit of GM dreck, no question. By the time 77 rolled around, it was definitely cheapened from their heydays in the early 60s and whatnot, but it's really held together quite well in this car. All this molded stuff and the soft plastics haven't cracked. They're in nice shape. Chrome looks good. You've got little tiny rear ashtrays. You've got your pull handle in great shape. You've got the same door plunger lock that I had in my Firebird and the same window cranks. And even in the Brougham model, the power windows were extra, and it seems like a lot of people didn't opt for them. Up front, again, you've got, I love this stuff. I mean, even the way this all still exists. I mean, these things would have been ripped off a lot of cars 40 years ago, well, 30 anyway. And it's just neat to see everything in such original and neat shape. And there you've got the body by Fisher on the skid plate. Hop in and fire it up. There you hear that big V8 firing to life. You know, big giant Cadillac mufflers on this thing, so it's very quiet. And of course, you know, it probably has a new exhaust system, honestly. I don't know if it's still the same one from 77, but either way, it's just nice and quiet. If you put a turbo muffler on there or ran duals to it, it would definitely get very, very throaty and lumpy, which would, you know, to the right guy, that's what he wants. To me, I think it's actually quite nice being quiet and cruiser like a big Cadillac. Over here, you've got your headlights. You've even got wood trim on the knob. You've got your washers with mist setting, your rear defogger. You got twin gauges here, which don't amount to much. You've got an 85-mile-an-hour speedo, and of course a gas gauge with a bunch of idiot lights around it. This one does have a nice tilt wheel, lovely, and the steering wheel in terrific shape. Very, very nice with the little wooden inlay and a nice proper horn, although it doesn't have a lot of depth to it. Up top, this is neat. You've still got your catalytic converter information. These are all stickers that would have long been gone on most of these things, and the sun visors are just in terrific shape. In 77, they went to school. They used a whole new dash in 77, supposedly because the molds for the old dash wore out, so they had to come up with something quick. So these got square vents instead of the earlier round ones. Here you've got your climate control with more wood trim, your AM/FM radio. You got the Romantics doing their thing with more wood trim on the knobs, which is kind of cool. The antenna is built into the windshield on this car, which I'm sure was a cost savings thing, and you know, they may have said it was for looks, but yeah, probably cost. And of course you got an ashtray and a lighter. They moved the clock over here in front of the let me roll this window down too. Actually gotta get this up. You know, this is the kind of crap that I didn't like about these 70s cars. You know, without power windows, you're leaning across to lower that. There's also no remote adjustment for the passenger side mirror, so you reach over, you set it where you think it should go, then you come back to the seat, you find your way off, then you reach over again, so on and so forth. You do it like 20 times before you get it perfect. But yeah, whatever. That's the worst the 70s threw at you. I'll take it over what's going on today. But anyway, that clock, I thought it would have a digital clock at this point in time, but there is an analog clock, which is still working, nice, and I don't know if that was a replacement or if the digital clock was an option. You got the 60/40 bench up front, split with an armrest, which is nice, and all very comfortable. So let's go for a spin. So here was my big pleasant surprise with this car, was just how nice it drove. If you remember, I railed on about how nice that 86 Jaguar went down the road. It just felt so nimble and light. I found myself going faster than I would if I wasn't thinking about it, or I was thinking about it. This car, it's very much the same thing. I can't believe how nice it drives. It's like being transported back to 1977. Wait for these gates. We'll see how Dalton did on the windshield. I got a bug this morning. I guess I can't pin him on that, but otherwise, let's see. Yeah, you know, it's not his worst work, but it's not great either. But But anyways, you've got this 350 V8. I want to say it's putting out 170 horsepower in 77. It's coupled to that Turbo Hydra 350 with shifts beautifully smooth. And the over-assisted power steering is lovely. Those radial TAs, they must be pretty fresh because I can barely feel them on the road. There's a tremendous separation between road irregularities and bumps. It has a lovely, lovely ride to it. It doesn't feel as big as an Eldorado, but it feels as smooth as one. And of course, with that Rochester Quadrajet, you do have secondaries which can kick in and give you a little bit of pep when you need it. I also like looking down the long hood at that hood ornament. Because, you know, personal luxury was all the rage when this car came out. Gone were the big block Chevelles, in were the disco nights and velour. But man, what a smooth rider, I have to say. I can see why Americans bought this car up in droves. I mean, this really preserved example gives me a nice feeling for how it was back then. And I bet when you got in and test drove this thing, it just felt like quality. Why all these dump trucks haul ass like that. It just seems to be a thing around here. They're all racing each other, going at top speed. You know, I mean, what the hell? I'm sure they're getting paid by the load. Maybe that's the problem. Alright, so far from a rocket ship, no question about that. I mean, if you're looking for 69 442 material, look somewhere else. This ain't it. But it does have the V8 and the V8 torque, and that's enough to get you going. And man, the cruise, the ride, the boulevard feel is just awesome in this car. Man, do I love driving it. I really do. The steering feels nice, the brakes are tight. You know, it's an old car now, but it feels modern enough to drive anywhere. I mean, I feel like this is a car I could hop in and, you know, go across the country and have a bit of fun with. And frankly, it's probably safe and reliable enough to do that. And that's what makes it a terrific entry-level collectible. Anyways, there it is. I'm not going to keep you waiting on this red light. I'll try to pick up something on the interstate on the way. But this is a 1977 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Brougham Coupe. This one with 19,000 miles on it, finished in tobacco brown with nicely matching interior. Just a stunning car inside and out. It's going to be for sale at Auto House. You can get them on the web at autohousenaples.com or by phone at 239-263-8500. Thank you very, very much for having a look. Really appreciate it. We got a lot more fun stuff coming up, more good cars, so keep an eye peeled, and I promise we're going to get a Cordoba eventually, and otherwise there's a bunch of great cars on the way. So take care, thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon.